Hi, welcome back to Positive Prepper. Thank you for the new subscribers on this channel. I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you know when new videos are coming out. So I'm going to ask a few questions, and then I'm going to give you 5 things that I really think you have a very short amount of time to get in place, if you will. And these are things that I know that I've talked about in almost every video, but it very well could be that your time to get these things in order might be running out, and I will explain that later on. So if gas prices reach $6 or $7 a gallon, what will you do? If food prices continue to rise exorbitantly, what will you do for food? If you support the Freedom Convoy, for example, and your bank account is frozen, what would you do? If the stock market crashes, what would you do? Remember that if the stock market crashes and you work for a publicly traded company, you may very well be out of a job. Or at least you might not even get a last paycheck. So what would you do? If World War III breaks out globally, what will you do? Okay, I'm trying to get you to think about some of these possibilities. We cannot plan for every possible direction from which an SHTF might come. I mean, we can't do that. But the Ides of March are coming, and for those of you not aware, March 15th was notable for the Romans as a date to settle debts, and then later on it was known as the death of the day that Julius Caesar was killed, was assassinated. And so I'm using Ides of March loosely in the fact that all of these things converging could happen between now and then, right? I've talked about before about how everything is sort of swirling around, right? And at some point there's going to be a convergence of all of this. So all of these things that are happening, at some point they're going to come together at a specific point in time, and we're going to be dealing with one crisis after another. And I don't say this to create fear or to give you an overwhelming sense of panic. I say these things because I want to increase your awareness of what you should be doing now, okay? As a positive prepper, yes, there's a lot of bad stuff that's going on in the news right now, globally, but this is not to fearmonger. This is to help you prepare. So what are those 5 things that you should be doing, knowing that gas prices are probably going to skyrocket, food prices are continuing to go up, and I don't see that stopping anytime soon. We don't talk so much about the supply chain issue, although we all know it's there. And then we have all of this other stuff going on in Canada and also over in Europe. So what I want to do is get you to think about the possibility and the things that, or the ways that all of this could impact you. So, and all of these things are things I believe that I've said before, probably, like I said, in almost every video, but I believe that your time is running out to get these done. So, number 1, get as much cash on hand as you can. Not all of us have, a bunch of money in the bank account, but a little cash is better than no cash. Okay, if the stock market tanks, there's going to be a run on the banks, and there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to get your money out. So make sure that you are taking even if it's $5, whatever you can get out in cash, get it out in cash and do that. The second one, fill your gas, your propane, your diesel tanks, whatever kind of fuel that you need. We know that if war does break out, our gas and oil prices are going to go incredibly high. One article I read said we could be as high as $7 a gallon. Okay, now I'm fortunate that, my husband works from home, so he's not driving, and I work about 15 minutes away. So it's not going to have as big of an impact, although it's still going to have an impact. Gas is gas, right? That means your propane, your diesel fuel, your all of that stuff is going to go up. So fill your gas cans, your propane tanks. If you've got diesel tanks, now is the time to fill those. Put the additives in it or whatever you have to do to get that to last longer if you can't cycle through it fast enough. But we know that these prices will absolutely skyrocket if the war actually does break out in Europe between Russia and Ukraine. Okay, so anything that you can ease that financial burden on yourself, that's always a good thing. That's kind of the goal of prepping, right? Is to not rely on those outside resources. It's to build up your own resources. Number 3, you need to finalize your MAG plans, or at least have a solid plan. So if you don't have a MAG group yet, which I'm hoping you do, but if you don't have a MAG group, you need to have a solid plan about where you're going to go and what you are going to do. If you intend on bugging out, so if you live in an urban area especially, and you plan on bugging out, where are you bugging out to? Do you have a secure location you are bugging out to? Have you made plans? Have you been preparing that location, right? You may have to be there a while. You have to make sure that you have the necessary resources and provisions to live there. Number 4, again, it goes without saying, stock up on your food and water. But now is the time to get your prescription medications. If you can, get at least 3 months worth of medications. Prescription medications are very difficult to get, in some places. And sometimes it's super, super hard to get your prescription medications for that far in advance. But there's herbal medications that are herbal remedies, things that you can take. There's alternatives to prescription medications. What can you do without? What does that do to your body? What can you do instead? These are the things that you need to be looking at if you're unable to get that 3 or 6 month stockpile of medications. You need to be looking at alternatives right now. That is super, super important. And then lastly, you need to finalize your defensive plans. The more desperate people become, it increases the chances of, or the danger of, like armed break-ins or thefts. I've even seen it in our rural area. I watched a was on the news. They had the carjackings in nearby cities and how they've gone up like 300%. Because they're taking the cars and they're taking things off the cars that have value, and then they tear down the vehicles. I think they did this in they did an article on this also in California, where they were stealing the cars. They would find the cars stripped of their tires, stripped of their computer chips, their radios, anything that has value. And that is becoming an increasing problem even in rural areas. So you need to have your defensive system in place, and you need to have your plan. We just recently installed our driveway alarm system. We have other alarm systems that we're putting in place very soon. It is, even if you can't go to that extent, having a way to defend yourself. If you can do that little bit, can make the difference between life and death when a SHTF happens, but not even then. I mean, we're kind of already in the middle of an SHTF, right? We got all this stuff going on. So anything that you can do to defend yourself isn't very important now, but will become increasingly important the more desperate people get. So something to think about. If you know your Bible, you know that these things were foretold. We may be facing some very difficult times. And I believe that, and I've said this before, that this year particularly is looking like a very difficult year. A year of tyranny, war, famine, massive weather events. And then you add to that the freedom fighters that are out there. We know where that could lead. But it also could mean, as they did up north, bringing out the emergency provisions, which is going to be very impactful on all of us, right? I don't normally do this, although, anybody that's been on this channel for a while knows where I stand. But I want to read you Psalm 124. And this is, it's 8 verses. Again, this is Psalm 124. If it had not been the Lord who is on our side, now may Israel say, if it had not been the Lord who was on our side when men rose up against us, then they had swallowed us up quick when their wrath was kindled against us. Then the waters had overwhelmed us, the stream had gone over our soul. Then the proud waters had gone over our soul. Blessed be the Lord, who hath not given us a prey to their teeth. Our soul is escaped as a bird out of the snare of the fowlers. The snare is broken, and we are escaped. Our help is in the name of the Lord, who made heaven and earth. In other words, if you have the Lord on your side, it doesn't matter what issues you face. The Lord has promised to retrieve our soul. And He will give us the strength to face whatever challenge we have to face in the coming months. Remember that we also have the midterm elections coming up in November. And, with everything else that's going to be going on in this early part of the year, and let's say that we get through that and we can breathe a sigh of relief. There was no more, there were no more serious lockdowns. Bank accounts weren't frozen. We didn't have any major weather events. We still have the midterm elections in November. And as I've said, I believe that certain people will do whatever it takes to make sure that they don't lose the power and control that they currently have. But with all of that being said, don't be discouraged. Don't give in. We must prepare, but we also must stand when that time comes. So do these 5 things as soon as you can, and don't be discouraged. If you have the Lord on your side, we're going to get through this. God bless.